While the United States has been deeply entrenched in its own trade disputes, Canada has been making significant moves in Europe. This shift isn't merely about diplomacy, it's also a strategic business move. While Washington was absorbed in tariffs and trade wars, Canada saw an opening and capitalized on it. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau didn't just visit Europe for symbolic purposes. He was there to send a clear message. Buy Canadian. This message directly challenges U.S. suppliers in European markets. If Canada succeeds in persuading NATO allies to shift their supply chains away from U.S. suppliers and toward Canadian ones, it could have far-reaching economic implications. Not only would Canadian companies gain a larger share of European markets, but this move would also alter the economic balance across the Atlantic, diminishing the U.S.'s long-held dominance. This move catches the U.S. off guard. Canada isn't just reinforcing existing trade relationships, it's establishing itself as a genuine alternative to the U.S. in global trade. At first glance, this might seem trivial. Canada has always been an ally to both the U.S. and Europe, after all. But in the world of trade, it's not just about partnerships, it's about leverage. Canada is actively positioning itself as a major player in transatlantic trade, and this could have far-reaching implications. Trudeau's team wasn't in Europe simply to discuss policies. They were there to close deals. Their pitch to European nations was simple: stop relying so heavily on U.S. suppliers. Choose Canada instead. Canada is offering several compelling advantages: competitive pricing, fewer trade restrictions, and a more stable and predictable trade environment. With the U.S. increasingly using tariffs and trade barriers as political tools, European businesses are growing wary. The value of Canadian trade relationships is now clearer than ever. This move isn't just about words, it's about real economic stakes. The Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, between Canada and the European Union, which has been in place since 2017, is foundational to this strategy. Canada is doubling down on this deal, which has already spurred an increase in trade between the two regions. In fact, trade between Canada and the EU has grown by 2/3 under CETA, which is a significant boost. Right now, trade between Canada and the EU is valued at about $119 billion annually. But if Canadian companies can capture even a fraction of the European supply chain market currently dominated by U.S. firms, the economic impact could be enormous. This shift could send billions of dollars away from the U.S. economy and into Canada's coffers, directly challenging U.S. economic interests. However, this strategy is about more than just trade. It's also about the evolving global political landscape. The U.S. has long been the dominant economic partner for its NATO allies, but its position is increasingly being questioned. Europe, in particular, is looking for ways to diversify its trade relationships. Canada is providing an alternative without severing ties with the U.S. entirely, which appeals to European businesses that are wary of becoming too dependent on any one partner, especially as U.S. trade policies become more unpredictable. The timing of Canada's move is crucial. The U.S. has been ramping up its use of economic pressure tactics, including imposing tariffs not only on rivals, but on allies as well. Just recently, the U.S. announced a 25% tariff hike on EU imports like automobiles. This decision sent shockwaves through European industries, making businesses uneasy about their reliance on U.S. suppliers. In contrast, Canada has established itself as a stable and reliable trade partner, one that isn't imposing tariffs or using trade as a tool for political leverage. For European businesses, this predictability is incredibly appealing. Another factor in this shift is energy security. Europe has long been dependent on U.S. energy exports, but as global energy markets become more volatile, European nations are seeking alternatives. Canada has positioned itself as a major supplier of natural gas and oil, offering energy security to European countries in a world where energy sources are becoming less stable and more contentious. This is an area where Canada's reliability stands out, especially as the U.S. increasingly looks to use energy trade for leverage. Moreover, Canada is making strong pushes in other sectors such as aerospace, manufacturing, and technology, all industries where Europe is actively looking for stable and competitive suppliers. European businesses, particularly in manufacturing and high-tech industries, are now rethinking their supply chains in light of the growing uncertainty around U.S. trade policies. Companies like Lindt and Sprungli, a top Swiss chocolate producer, are already adjusting their sourcing strategies to reduce their exposure to U.S. tariffs, exploring Canadian options to mitigate the risks of escalating trade tensions. But beyond the immediate economic impact, there's a larger political angle to consider. If Canada strengthens its trade relationships with Europe, it doesn't just gain economically, it also gains political leverage. For decades, the U.S. has used its economic dominance as a tool to influence global politics, especially within NATO. However, if NATO members begin to shift their trade relationships toward Canada, Washington's ability to influence these nations through economic means would diminish. This is something the U.S. would likely view as a serious threat to its political dominance. Right now, Canada is testing the waters. It's making its case, signing deals, and seeing how far European businesses are willing to go. If this strategy succeeds, it could result in a massive shift in transatlantic trade dynamics, with Canada positioning itself not just as a U.S. trade partner, but as an independent economic force. The U.S. is watching closely, and the next steps are crucial. If Canada continues to gain ground, Washington may be forced to decide whether it will counteract this trend by offering better trade incentives to European businesses or by pressuring Canada to back off. There are risks to both approaches. If the U.S. attempts to push European companies back toward U.S. supply chains by offering tax breaks, lower tariffs, or exclusive agreements, it could push European businesses further into Canada's arms, particularly given the increasing unpredictability of U.S. trade policy. Alternatively, if the U.S. pressures Canada directly, using tariffs or trade restrictions on Canadian exports, it could escalate tensions with a close neighbor and ally. Canada has already shown it is willing to push back, such as when Ontario suspended a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the U.S. This tug-of-war between the U.S. and Canada over trade and influence is only beginning. Canada's broader strategy is clear. It is looking to reduce its dependency on the U.S. by expanding its trade relationships with Europe, Latin America, and Asia. If Canada successfully diversifies its markets, it will gain significant leverage in future trade negotiations with the U.S. As Canada gains ground, it strengthens its ability to negotiate from a position of power rather than relying on the U.S. as a dominant trade partner. In the long term, this shift could be transformative. If Canada becomes a serious alternative to U.S. suppliers, it could reshape the global trade landscape. But the U.S. isn't just going to sit back and let this happen. The question is how the U.S. will respond. Will it double down on its economic tactics to keep European businesses in line, or will it accept that Canada is carving out its own space in global trade? One thing is clear. Canada is no longer just a secondary partner to the U.S. in trade. It is positioning itself as a serious player, and whether Washington likes it or not, this shift is already underway. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to stay updated, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. We'll see you in the next one.